Who is someone you don't like but you respect? There's a guy in my office named Bill. Bill isn't friendly, but he's polite. He eats alone because he wants to, leaves the office, never goes into the lunchroom. His cubicle has no pictures, no personal mementos. He never speaks in team meetings and doesn't contribute to office potlucks or theme days. He never comes out for after-work drinks. He's pretty standoffish. But my God, his work is amazing. If you have a bad client, Bill will deal with it. If you have a tech issue, Bill knows how to fix it. If you have any work-related problem, Bill will know how to solve it. I don't like Bill, but Bill has all the respect in the office. And yes, Bill is proof that you can be the most respected person in the office without ever uttering a single word about anything other than quarterly projections. Story 2. My boss, or rather my supervisor, she's freaking tough, no time for drama kind of person. Not really sociable, but very professional. She demands hard work and dedication, and the employees that do not fit her standard will know that. She didn't like me at first because I have my own thing. Let's say I'm a free spirit. But after my results started really picking up, she warmed up to me. I still don't like her, but I do respect that she made demands I had to meet, and when I met them, I got the nod of approval, so to speak. To clarify, my boss, who I've learned to respect, probably doesn't like me because A, I'm pretty vocal about stuff, and 2, I don't have a great history with authority, so to speak, and 3, I've heard I can be strange. I still value that this person has been able to get me work well in a team, all the while letting me do what I do best, which is communication. Go figure. I'm just great with people, like real people. I just do it in a way my boss doesn't really understand, but I'm still very effective and I get results. Wow, right? Now, another thing for you edgelords out there. When you're all grown up, you have bills to pay and kids to feed. There's no such thing as, I would have noped out of there like you wouldn't believe. You're a chicken crap dark pasta for not sticking it to the man. No, you freaking wouldn't. Stop posturing. I'm a grown man with a job, and I need to pay my bills to be on the interwebs and argue about this, which is fun. Bye. Story 3. I have a coworker who is arrogant. The thing is, he backs up his bluster with a high level of skill and knowledge. He got promoted and I took over his responsibilities. He didn't train me much and I had to figure out a lot of it on my own, but I got good fast. The thing is, I am a quiet professional, so no one noticed. When stuff hit the fan, I got blamed. Leadership held a meeting and brought in my coworker who they respect a great deal. He looked into what I'd been doing the previous few months and said I was going above and beyond what he would have done if he was in my shoes. He saved my job, and since then, I've gotten a lot of recognition for my performance and work ethic. And for that, I'm absolutely grateful to him. You can still be kind of a schmuck, though. Story 4. I think Donald Glover sucks. I hate his stand-up. I hate his sketches. I hate most of his music. I think he's a corny rapper for the most part. I think he's a terrible actor. I think he's a cheap director. I think he's a terrible writer. I do not think he actually has any talent. I straight up do not see it at all. I do not like anything he has put out save Redbone, and I try very hard to like his stuff. But I think it's mad cool that he puts himself out there so boldly and unapologetically, whether he has been trained to or not. He seems like a good man and a good father, and I agree with his politics. Would love to be brave enough to just go for it, like that's cool as heck. Story 5. Snape, Severus Snape. But not to sound like a nerd or anything, Snape was a vital part of the Harry Potter series and pretty much created the story as he and Wormtail, barf, both sold out James and Lily's whereabouts to Voldy. Even though Snape had remorse and begged Voldemort not to go for them, he did anyway. And so then he had to watch over their son. Now let me break it down some more. Snape loved Lily and hated James, then had to watch his love fall for his enemy and Mary. Even though it's kind of his fault that happened, you don't call your crush a mudblood, dude. And then had spite for James and sold him out, not knowing Lily would probably be terminated too. So he begged his lord, but Voldy said nope and ended the Potters. Snape had before this gone to Dumbledore and asked to be a teacher to, unknowingly to Dumbly, be a double agent for Voldemort and get info. But after Lily passed away, Snape had become a triple agent for Dumbledore, which Voldemort didn't know about. So listen, Snape has had a rough go of it so far, and you might be sympathetic, but hold on. When Snape found out he had to protect Harry Potter, he wasn't happy, but it was for Lily, so he did. When Harry got to Hogwarts, Snape was so mean to him just because he couldn't look Harry's father in the face and still had spite for James. But he had his mother's eyes. Now, Snape does come around in the end and helps Harry out in 7 with the magical tears, and I respect him, but I don't like him for being so mean to Harry when all he did was survive. So sorry this is so long. I got very passionate about my Potter boy. Story 6. I may get blasted for this, but I'm going to say Donald Trump. I disagree with his views on many issues. However, I do agree with some. Same with his policies. I also don't believe he is this amazing businessman that people make him out to be. However, I do believe that he is extremely intelligent and a marketing genius. Somehow he managed to turn his last name into a huge moneymaker and use that to become president. People underestimated him and he used that to his advantage. He went after a large demographic that felt like they were ignored, and they were, and that's why he won. I think he's developed a cult of personality around himself to the point where his supporters would follow him blindly no matter what he did. He could puppies and people would still support him. I don't know how the man did it, but he did. However, whenever I mention that I respect his accomplishment, I get blasted. It seems like people can't separate the fact that you might not like it and agree with someone, but can still appreciate their achievements. Story 7. A professor at my university. I guess he just can't get along with a lot of people, especially foreigners, like international students or professors from other countries. He got into an argument with a Jewish professor from Russia one day, hitting the table with his hand before storming out of the meeting room. The situation was so tense that the Russian professor had to be hospitalized later. He felt very guilty afterwards and went to the hospital to visit him. In addition, he was very strict with his students. I remember he yelled at a student from some South American country for being late to class and told him to get out of the classroom, which caused the student to drop the class at the middle of the semester. I seriously doubt if he could survive in any profession that requires you to work with your boss and colleagues. So I guess pursuing an academic career is definitely a right life choice for him. That being said, he is very fair. That's the consensus of quite a few students whom I talked with. For example, there were 4 tests for the physical metallurgy course that he taught, and I screwed up the second test in which I only got like a 60 plus. I remember when I walked past him, he looked at me with contempt since I was a graduate student then, and a lot of undergrads did better than I did in that test. But he didn't give me a low score in the third test only because I screwed up the second one, since I got 90 plus in the third test and he gave me an A for that course. He is also very knowledgeable. When he taught that course, he really went way beyond what an undergraduate course should teach, and he taught us a lot of extra knowledge in metallurgy. And I always respect people who are knowledgeable. There is a reason that he is a distinguished professor of teaching at my university. Story 8. There's a guy that I worked with at a previous job. We had the same circle of work friends at the previous job, but he refused to speak to me, going so far as to just stare at me and walk away whenever I even asked him a work-related question. He had been there for years and found out that he was like that towards people that were newer. Fast forward a couple of years and now I have seniority and this schmuck keeps trying to talk to me. If it's work-related, I will give him as short an answer as possible to minimize us talking, because it's in my interest for him to be competent. The best part is that he doesn't remember me. I really hate this guy, but he puts in the work, so I do respect him. I just really hate the guy. Story 9. Working at a remote call center, my Middle Eastern manager at the time pulled me for a meeting. She listened to a call where I ended up crying, not with the customer, but with the manager I had to get because I made a mistake. She asked if I was an only child, often talked down to me, assuming what my life was like. We don't cry. She could not have been more wrong about who I am and what my life is like. A lot of my coworkers don't like her. I hated the weekly meetings. Her, I'm the only one with real problems and look how I'm doing. However, speaking with so many people every day, knowing how especially Middle Eastern people are treated by customers, I often get thanked for speaking English. I can't stand it. She somehow continued to rise in ranks and still is today. The respect and strength she has for herself is amazing. Story 10. I actually like her now when I started to contemplate more on what she did. But back in high school, there was this chemistry teacher that was really harsh on anyone caught acting up in class. Like, if you talked during her class while she was giving a lecture, she'd stop, go towards you, drag you out of the class, and yell at you for a good 5 minutes before going back. The yelling was so loud you could hear it from 2 classrooms down. I've seen students who were notorious class clowns or always try to start crap. They were too afraid to deal with her. I always thought it was a bit too harsh, but I kind of respect that no BS attitude, and only appreciated it more as I grew up older. There was one time I did accidentally fall asleep during her class while she was playing some chemistry video or something, and she woke me up. I fully expected to get crap on, but she didn't really do anything to me and told me to try to stay awake. She actually called my parents and was actually genuinely concerned that I was suffering some sort of health problem because I never fall asleep in any classes, so she felt it was out of the ordinary for me. I was pretty embarrassed that she did that, but as I grew up older, I realized it was out of genuine concern because she's actually a very friendly teacher outside of classes and if you don't anger her. Also, I actually passed out because I stayed up until like 5 a.m. grinding an RO online with the boys. It was worth it though. Story 11. Anyone who brags about their genuine talent, smartness, power, expense, and fortune, but only through their hard work and maximum effort. These kinds of people are easily disliked and even extremely hateable, but it's also extremely hard to disrespect them as well. At least they accomplish something that complements their bragging. Examples being Kanye West, Tywin Lannister even, and hell, I could include Batman too. Even though he doesn't brag, well, sometimes, and relies on his family fortune but utilizes them smartly. It's hard to like him sometimes for not terminating Joker for his atrocities, but respect Batman for his actions and stays true to his code. There is a reason why the Justice League find Batman dislikable, but sure as hell respect him 100%. Right, so basically these people are the human equivalent of a LinkedIn profile that's been aggressively curated for maximum humble brag impact. You hate them, but you also kind of want their spreadsheet templates. Story 12. At my new job, there's an Asian guy who does the same job as me, but he's been doing it far longer. Since I'm new, he will try to give me a tip or two here and there. While I respect his experience and his willingness to help, his way of doing it is a bit confrontational, sort of like a tiger mom. Not to mention the fact that the industrial nature of the job, a lot of loud machinery, and his thick accent make it hard for me to understand what he's saying. I respect him for his experience and wanting to help me, but I just don't like how he tries to help me. I had a Pakistani boss at a previous job who was the same way, but since it was quieter there, I could understand him better. I don't like him because he was strict, but I still respect him for that. Especially after he left and his replacement was just as strict but about trivial things and was always very condescending. Story 13. My old high school band director. I've based a lot of my life philosophies on his philosophies, and since meeting him, I've tried to conduct myself how he conducts himself. He's a very talented and often charismatic man, and he's very good at what he does, i.e. music, performance, dancing, etc. He just has this way of making people around him want his approval. Also, under his direction, we became the top marching band in our state. I just had this hero worship of him back then. I respected him so much. Heck, even the way I dress today was influenced by his style. And my life has been so thoroughly changed by the marching band and his influence, which is crazy for me to think about sometimes because he's also a huge schmuck. Favoritism galore back in high school. His tongue was sharp and he wasn't afraid to tear into his students with a viciousness that I didn't recognize at the time was wrong. I remember the year we went to BOA for the first time, first in our state to ever attend. I literally cried after every practice because of how hard he'd push us and mean he would be. Mean words weren't a problem for him, and he would single out students and say scathing things to them, which, if any of you remember as high school students, is hugely embarrassing and horrifying. He was so nasty during that year because of all the stress and the pressure. I thought it would end once the marching season was over, but his bad attitude lasted. I once walked into the freshman band class that year only to catch him absolutely laying into the tiny kids, shouting. Afterwards, my kids, the ones I took under my wing during marching season, told me that they deserved it. I was horrified. I talked to the other band director, amazing and kind and in love with his work, and he agreed that it was a problem. Another student and I agreed and collaborated with our other band director to all go to the administration to report him. So, yeah, huge respect for what he does and the wonderful sense of family and duty he gave us, plus the major influences he's had on my life and personality. But also, screw him for being a bad teacher and not giving a damn about the consequences of how he treats people. Story 14. Logan Paul. I mean, I freaking hate the content he produces, but there is at least some effort going into his videos. Even if some of his vlogs are fake, like the cottage he'd broken into during a snowboarding vlog a long while back, it's still a hustle. On top of that, he has and had to record videos and movies for YouTube Red. He has to find time to talk bad about KSI live and box with him. And on top of that, he was trying to keep his mockumentary secret, the whole flat earth crap. I only can imagine how crammed his schedule has to be. Now, don't get me wrong, his content is still awful, but the mass of content he and his team produced is astonishing. Story 15. Oh, there's a couple. Bono from U2. Seriously, like by all accounts, he genuinely cares and makes a great effort to help people and all that, but boy, do I dislike him. Tom Cruise. Okay, so I absolutely, positively cannot stand the guy for his religious shenanigans, but every single person I've heard talk about him says he's a super nice guy. Always takes time to make people feel better, always has time for his kids even while in the middle of a scene. Always a gentleman, but boy, he creeps me out so much for that one thing, really. Brock Lesnar, really can't stand the mercenary-like behavior, his egotistical attitude as an athlete, but he undeniably made his way and sticks to a rigorous routine to do so I just can't find much of a good thing about him as a guy, but for the work he has put in the past, I do respect him for that. Story 16. The terrain and grounds manager of our scout center. It's a big piece of green near Rotterdam, so the city keeps trying to screw with our scout group to tear down our nature and develop it for profit. We're lucky to have it. The government and city planners aren't able to touch us for various reasons, but still try occasionally through sneaky loopholes. The grounds manager deals with all that legal crap for us on top of managing nature and general upkeep. He and his wife are not nice people. They are not nice to us or the clubs, but they have a job and they do it well. They manage the vast forest and grassland our scouts and cubs enjoy and preserve it so the city planning office can't screw us over. I don't like them, but I respect how hard they work for all of our benefits. Story 17. My parents. I love them. They can be schmuck sometimes, but they immigrated from Poland to here a bit over 16 years ago as newlyweds. My dad just finished law school and wanted to escape his parents. They came here, and now they have 2 sons, me and my brother, their own house, over 6 apartments in Spain, which they rent to other people, and my dad has his own law firm. Unfortunately, we still have contact with my grandparents. I'm transgender, so everything that I hear from them about me makes me physically sick. But again, respect to them. They have multiple housing estates, a massive house, and 3 BMWs. My granddad also had a furniture company in the 70s and 80s, but it was shut down because he was accused of tax fraud, which he claims he did not commit. Story 18. This girl I knew in college who was friends with my roommate. I wouldn't say I don't like her, but I'm not crazy about her either. She was a massive witch, like she probably slept with 60 guys the first year. IDK, she told me once what her count was, but I forgot. It was insane though. The reason I kind of have bad respect for this girl though is how open she was about it. Most girls try to hide it and act like they never have intimacy, but she was so honest about it with absolutely no shame, and you kind of had to be careful what you asked her because she would tell you anything about her experiences, not who they were, but with things that happened. That was the other thing I respected about her. She never talked about any of the guys she slept with behind their back, and she never cheated on anyone either. When she was in a relationship, she was the most loyal girlfriend in the world, but she would just go wild when she was single. She wasn't stupid about it either. She got tested regularly and made sure to take all the precautions. She was an alright girl. She just really liked intimacy, that's all. My reasons for not being crazy about her have nothing to do with any of this, by the way, and no, it also isn't because she wouldn't sleep with me, lol. And if you're enjoying the video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 19. My wife's sister's baby daddy. My SIL got into some major substances after her son was born. Baby daddy didn't even know the baby was his. When the paternity test came back that he was the father, he immediately went to court to get full custody of his son, so he wouldn't be in her substance-using presence. The first court appearance, she showed up late and strung out. She didn't even show it to the others. I don't hate the guy, just not someone I would hang out with personally. He's a bit grungy, doesn't seem like personal hygiene is a big concern. Just not my kind of dude to hang around and buddy-buddy with. But goddamn, do I not respect that guy to the ends of the earth. He does manual labor, and as someone who's disabled, I respect the heck out of him for that. He puts food on the table and a house overhead for his son. His soon-to-be wife is a little rough around the edges too, but is also an awesome mother figure for his son. I guess he's proof that grungy and good dad aren't mutually exclusive, though I'm still not sure about the personal hygiene thing. Story 20. Ollie Sykes from BMTH. I absolutely hate their music with a passion, always have. But I saw them at a show years back. Admittedly, it was never going to end well because the acts that night were Atreyu, BMTH, then headlining were Bullet for My Valentine around the time Fever came out, so before they went really tame in my opinion. If you ask me, having BMTH there was a very poor choice and a very bad contrast of bands. Anyway, he came on stage, got booed by 50,000 people, and whilst I can't remember the exact words he used because it was a while ago, it was along the lines of, if you hate me, then this is what I have to say. Shouted, screw you, and flipped them off, then proceeded with their set. put 110% into that set as well, despite the fact that the entire crowd did not want them there. Props for that. Story 21. The only other female forensic entomologist I know is prodigiously talented at her job, and she's incredibly conscientious as well as dispassionate, which renders her acumen far more efficient than those too sensitive. However, she perceives me as an encroachment upon her territory, and everything I do is construed as the machinations of an ambitious usurper. Her arrogance is justified because she's had an illustrious career and taught at prestigious institutions, but she guards her position in the hierarchy rather overzealously. She has a tendency to cast aspersions about others that reveals a rather undignified puerility for such an accomplished woman. She knows no one can supersede her contributions to the field, nor has anyone ever intended to disparage them, but she has a proprietorial hand beckoning to all the prospective cases. What? Story 22. Had a friend that was cheating on her husband. She got mad at me for preventing her from getting involved with a guy friend by telling him that she's married. She claimed that it was an open relationship, but at the same time wanted him to not know about it. Then she tried to make me look like the bad guy in the situation. Then spread rumors that I was using guys for free stuff and money while cheating on her husband and staying with him because he makes good money. Pretty witchy of her. She did get a divorce. Husband was emotionally unstable and is studying to be an accountant while being a full-time teacher at a school. She also does after-school programs, an anime club, and raises money for the kids to go to anime conventions. She also has a side job selling geeky stuff to make extra money. She is hardworking, and I can respect that. Story 23. My mother. She tells me to go pass away at least once a month and tells me how much she regrets having me. But she works for the Illinois Department of Public Health and has enough authority to shut down hospitals and clinics with one simple ticket. She's also a non-research professor at the local community college and teaches PhD students. She, herself, has a master and a PhD in nursing administration. She came to America with a 4-year-old child, me, and a husband who barely knew English and hadn't completed high school. But she's the reason I'm such a messed up kid now, so whatever. Story 24. Actually, there is this girl I hate, but for no good reason. I just hate her. I actually feel really bad for hating someone, but every time I meet her, we have mutual friends. I treat her nicely and respectfully because, well, that's how I am. I believe that despite how I feel, another human being must be treated like a human being. I never said to my friends I hate her because I don't want them to exclude her because of this. If I know she will be there, I'll try to come up with an excuse to not go or just ignore this feeling. I'm always gentle and polite, but I never start a talk or whatever with her. If she talks to me, I answer, short and objective. I think she has some idea that I don't like her. She never tries to talk to me. Story 25. Stephen Hawking. I'm both a physics student, 1 year from grad school, and a Christian. I also adore philosophy and have deeply considered the ramifications of my beliefs, ontological issues, and the plethora of paradoxes and fallacies. I have, over the years, developed a philosophical position that so far has allowed me to study what I love without having to compromise my spiritual beliefs or develop cognitive dissonance. One key point of it is the acknowledgement that a theistic perspective, an atheistic perspective, or an agnostic one are all perfectly valid given the limited information humans have at their disposal. As a result, I am 100% okay with whatever your personal belief system might be, so long as it isn't used as justification to harm someone else or otherwise worsen another person's life. I'm not perfect, not by a long shot, and maybe not even correct. However, I'm trying to do the best I can with what I have and what I want to believe in. Then there's this guy who insisted that God doesn't exist, it would be impossible for such a figure to exist, and heavily implied anyone who believes in a god or gods is deluded and or ignorant. I won't deny his intelligence and have a huge respect for his contributions to astrophysics and cosmology, but as a human being, I think he was reprehensible for his unwillingness to even consider an alternative to what he believed. Story 26. This kid I've gone to school with my whole life, I won't name names, let's just call him S. Now, S and I have gotten along well most of our lives, that is, until middle school. Something snapped in him and he had changed completely over the summer. And me, living next door to him, knew nothing really happened, but he stopped leaving the house. In our 8th grade year, he became the school's dealer. Whatever crap you wanted, he had and would give it to you. He got into a lot of fights as well, was suspended most of the year, so he had to be held back. Skip ahead 4 years and he's in the grade below me, so I don't see him much, but often enough that we talk in between classes and extend our numbers for the first time. I still was and am kind of bothered by all the crap he did, but ever since I started connecting with him again, he's been clean and trying to get back to the go-lucky good kid again. So I don't like S, but crazy respect for trying to get his life back together. Story 27. Back in the day, I helped with a youth group. One of the other leaders was an arrogant, self-assured guy, and I didn't like him much. This guy was a straight-up genius, though. He aced everything in school. He had a natural grace and athletic ability. He was quick-witted and performed theater sports, improv, all of which made him a bit arrogant. Oh yeah, and his dad owned a business, so he also came from money. I don't know if you figured it out yet, but my hatred had more to do with my jealousy. The dude had to choose between becoming a doctor or pursuing a career in theater and doing improv professionally. He chose to be a doctor, and you don't have to worry about any student loans. He won a seat onto the World Series of Poker through an internet poker site and came in second on one of those TV events. I have mad respect for the guy, and the dislike faded away when I think about how bad he could have acted with all of that talent. He was actually quite a good guy under an arrogant exterior. Story 28. My sister-in-law is such a witch. She lives a couple of hours away, and her parents live really close to me. She visits them weekly, and if it ever happened that my brother visited us at my parents' house, she wouldn't ever get out of the car to say hi. She's always annoyed by something and sometimes yells at my brother and stresses him out. I don't have many good things to say about her except that she really helped my brother at one point. She saved his life. He was a user, and we saw him go from a youthful 23 to 25-year-old to a complete zombie. It broke our hearts, and we were afraid of the day we'd get the call he coded. But he met her, and she sobered him up, and he turned his life around. She saved his life, and for that, I respect her, and even if she acts the way she does, I just try my best to be civil and respect her choices. Story 29. My ruthless 9th grade science teacher with a pretty ferocious name to go with it. He was strict, made you think about literally all your answers with very out-of-the-box, bare minimum, and overall confusing hints to which he took away your chair for, and make you go an entire period purely just thinking in silence while he yelled at you, like you were stupid when you couldn't come up with the answer fast enough. He was just freaking weird at that, the topping on the cherry being his geeky room filled with his superhero obsessions and random things like a giant coin. He just wasn't well liked by many either, and often thought of as weird. However, what I and everyone else could definitely respect about him was his usefulness and overall wish to help regardless of method. He'd stay after school to teach or tutor students every day. He had supplies from about every area of the region. Just thinking about something, and this man had it. Notebooks? Yup. Posters? Yup. Lanyards and ID holders? Yup. Pads and tampons? Yup. A glasses-framed screwdriver? Yup. Just about everything. Story 30. He's a coworker who's openly gay, but that's not why I dislike him. I dislike him because we're separately good people, but somehow don't gel well. He takes issues with my brain farts. I have lack of sleep and don't really function well in conversations, whereas he's a witty person. I take issue with the fact that he can't stop talking loudly. It was nice at the beginning, but over time it didn't grow on me. And he once slammed my trash on my table instead of clearing it for me. There were a handful of us working in an enclosed environment, so we cleared each other's trash. I've cleared the trash for everyone several times, so that one simple action really jolted me. I respect him because he buys office snacks. He started the trend and all of us now buy office snacks. We're even. I respect him because he's the most technically skilled of us and helps us often with our work. Story 31. My boss, Kay. Kay was hired a few months ago for a low-stress assistant manager position at the concert and sport venue I work at. She was employed at an NFL-level company previously, but quit and moved specifically because of the workload. Her job as assistant manager would have entailed talking to promoters, managing the ticket booth schedule, and helping organize will-call tickets before events. Then my boss, the actual director of ticketing, quit literally a week before Kay started. Instead of leaving us high and dry, Kay stuck it out while I attempted to train her to do things I was honestly clueless about. Setting up events in the system, working out deals with promoters, etc. Kay learned how to direct ticketing operations after about 2 weeks of training. She never once complained, never once forgot something I had shown her, and never once thought about quitting. My previous boss had left us BS to work with, constantly cutting corners in his event infrastructure and leaving high-profile accounts unpaid. Meanwhile, the CFO literally bullied her into undertaking projects way above what she was paid for. $18 an hour to do everything versus the $96K per year my previous boss was making. I've worked for Kay for about 6 months now. About 3 weeks ago, we hired a new director of ticketing. He's a 60-year-old Patriots fan who was absolutely unable to learn our system and actually thinks training everyone to use an archaic command prompt style interface would be easier than just learning. Kay still does 70% of all the work, is paid the same, and works 60 hours most weeks. I respect Kay so much. She is in another league of humans. Without her, we would have been screwed out of our jobs as a third-party management firm would have been hired. With that being said, she's a micromanager, so Story 32. My mother. I'm living with her currently because she's going through a divorce and wasn't able to pay all of the bills on her own. She doesn't know when to stop talking. When I confide in her about some serious stuff, she goes and tells everyone what I said. She almost got my brother thrown in jail one time because she didn't want to get into an argument with her now ex-husband. She talks about the same things every day like it's her first time telling me, and she refuses to help with chores around the house. She also refuses to get a job even though my brother and I implore her to do so. She blames her inability to get a job on her physical, back and neck problems and mental PTSD, or so she says, disabilities. However, I know her neck and back aren't an issue because she goes to the gym on a regular basis. I can't say much about the PTSD because I don't know what it's like, but I think she's overplaying it. When I think of someone with actual PTSD, I think of night terrors, tremors, flashbacks, and depression caused by the offending event. She has none of these. She is the most irritating person I know, but she's my mother and I have to love her. Story 33. I'm a very far left, gay woman of color and lifelong Democrat. And politically, this is basically my attitude towards John McCain and many of the other old guard Republicans, the ones who are often portrayed as rhino now. I don't like him or his politics, but I absolutely, honestly, and easily believe that McCain was trying to do right by his constituents and the American people at large and did his best to act honorably and compassionately within the context and scope of his politics. This is perhaps a little fanciful, abstract, or philosophical, not to mention potentially condescending coming from a Democrat, but honestly, I think the real Republican Party GOP passed away the day McCain did. Story 34. My father. He's a cheap schmuck that's cheated on both of his wives multiple times. He also used to hit my mother, but damn, his story is incredible. Born in 1949 in a cabin with no electricity or running water, moved out at 15 because his father hit his mother and he couldn't take it anymore. Worked as a car mechanic when not in school to earn money. At 18, he was going to graduate high school but got into another fight, hauled before a judge and given the choice of jail or the military. So he joined the U.S. Army in 1967, no diploma. Somehow, in 4 years of service, never deployed to combat, meets my mother and gets out of the Army. Moves back to Ohio, I'm born, and he realizes that local construction and working pit crew for local dirt track racers, those aren't going to pay the bills, so he re-enlists in 1973, ends up making it his career, earned his GED in through the Army, went to college through the Army. His final posting required advanced mathematics, which he took courses to be able to do. When he retired, he started buying property in West Virginia and Ohio while working a civilian government job. He now owns several apartment buildings locally, along with a dozen rental properties and his own home, where he runs a dog rescue. If he weren't a right schmuck, it'd be a great story. Story 35. There's a manager in my department that works very hard and loves her job, but she is incredibly narcissistic and pretty much only likes you if you're willing to fluff up her ego. She's also one of those pseudo-feminists that understand feminist theories but applies them strictly in the wrong way. For example, she claims to hate makeup because of how it panders to the male gaze. And normally I'd be fine with that, except she said she hated women who wear loads of makeup. Hating women in the process of hating things that pander to the patriarchy is like counterintuitive. Not to mention I'm sick of her announcing how many steps she'd done on her Fitbit. Boo works hard, but Boo needs to understand that you can't bash all people for their hobbies, especially when yours is paying attention to how many steps you've done on an overpriced bracelet. My favorite moment was when she'd assumed I wasn't athletic, fit, or strong, only for her to find out I'm a power lifter and easily helped carry a piano from a student's old apartment to their new one. Story 36. Probably too late, but here goes. I was hoping I wouldn't have said this, but really, Kim Jong-un. Now, you would think I'm crazy, but hear me out. Dictatorships are interesting because of what someone has to do to stay in power. In dictatorships, you need the key supporters to follow you, a small number of them. But they won't just follow anyone for any reason. You give them wealth so that they stay loyal, lots of it. But there is so much wealth coming out of your pocket, so you have a super tax or find an alternative source of wealth, oil, for instance. If you spend even a penny on citizens, that money isn't going to loyalty, the same money a rival can promise. So in dictatorships, you need to be as corrupt as possible. No going around that. In democracies, it's different. The reason many democracies have such strong economies and a good life is because most of the wealth comes from the people. If politicians want more wealth to give to key supporters, they must get money, and that makes the citizens more important than in dictatorships. That is why democratic governments will make universities and bridges that bring up the welfare of the people. Not because of the goodness in their heart, although politicians want you to think that, but due to some miracle that the welfare of a politician is also the welfare of the people. Do you see now why this man is such a smart guy? He's following textbook procedures for dictatorship politics. Story 37. Bernie Sanders. I know it's incredibly unpopular to say anything against him, but I sit fairly center politically, and I tend to have a strong disdain for most policies and rhetoric that is far left. Admittedly, I am truly distraught over the current political situation in the US, as neither side seems to represent my views whatsoever, and I see the whole process as little more than a screaming match between people that lack common courtesy, some more than others. That being said, I respect his consistency and commitment to a set of values and policies, and I will openly defend him for his efforts throughout his career. I also greatly appreciate the fact that he seldom lowers himself to make personal attacks and tends to stay on topic in debates. For me, he's a great example of what a politician in this country should be: respectable, consistent in their values, but open to changes in policy and civil to opposition. I think if more people behaved in a manner similar to his, regardless of their politician orientation, we would be much better off. Story 38. I didn't like this sergeant in the army. He was always flexing and pushing to run faster past my limit. He would constantly, look like it to me, be a schmuck to his soldiers and everyone around him. When my grandma passed, I had to go home and I didn't have enough money for a plane ticket. He worked it out with the military and took me under his wing all day, going left and right, talking to people, and I got a free plane ride back and forth. I had a newfound respect for him and saw him under a new light. Turns out he's just overly passionate about his job and was acting like a father figure. Story 39. My AP US history teacher in high school, she was a piece of work. She had dry, cutting wit. I had her during the third period, which was when detention slips and other office notices were sent. She would make kids read their detention slips out loud. When school pictures were delivered, she'd show kids the school pictures to the whole class before handing it off to them. And side note, she had a horrible fashion sense. I can only describe it as Amish fashionable. But by God, the best teacher I've ever had, hands down. She took time out of her own schedule to lead group study sessions in the weeks leading up to the AP test. I ended up with a 4 out of 5. Thanks, Mrs. A. Story 40. I was talking about this in my communications class last week. Anyways, I don't like my old boss, Alexis, for a very petty reason. She left without saying goodbye. Like literally, one day she was there, and then when I got to work the next day and my coworker told me she transferred to another store. Now, I was raised to say goodbye to people. That's just how I function. But I guess that's not what other people do. Like, why would you leave and then not tell anyone? You think they're gonna respect and like you from then on? All you had to do was say, hey, I'm transferring to another store. I'm gonna miss you. I saw her at the Christmas party and she tried to talk to me, but I just said hi to her and walked away. Now, I don't like her, but I will still respect her. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.